Chapter 24, A Patchwork Black. It is inhuman to be totally good as it is to be totally evil. Anthony Burgess, A Clockwork Orange. The 4th of July marked the club's largest mandatory annual run, attracting outlaws from all over the world. Milwaukee Jack, the Outlaws' national boss, summoned leaders from other regions, and pre-partying began days before. Gringo and I wound our way to North Carolina on July 1st, speeding in formation, splitting the double-line highway divider, and traveling so close to traffic we could have spit in the car windows. Hot sun dehydrated us. We stashed provisions this time. Sunscreen and bottled water. Claw and other agents stayed behind to entertain outlaws traveling from distant regions who needed temporary quarters. Upon arrival, Gringo and I assumed our usual post, guard duty and bartending. As the only two prospects serving 50 or so outlaws, we were run ragged. 20-hour shifts morphed into 30 without rest. Sleep, when we were lucky enough to grab it, occurred in the van in blazing heat and sticky humidity. Anxiety ripped through me as I hustled drinks and ice. I didn't want a black eye. After a while, I couldn't feel my legs. They tingled with fatigue. By day 2, I worked on automatic pilot, jerking toward commands and sounds, moving, always moving, until suddenly my momentum shattered. "I need to talk to you," an outlaw ushered Gringo aside. Tall as he was wide, sweat stained his armpits and slicked his forehead. His tangled braid swung like a whip behind his back. A smile died in the center of his eyes. A chill came over me as Gringo disappeared with him. He and I had always discussed escape plans, what to do if suddenly cornered. We rehearsed like a fire drill. But my mind blanked. I forgot the distress signals, couldn't remember the requisite time to wait. I poured beer, wiped the counter, dropped blocks of ice on the floor, and felt the dizzy pool of panic. Crazy thoughts filled my head. Someone had recognized Gringo. He had successfully infiltrated the Warlocks in Northern Virginia. Snuff's chapter was in Northern Virginia. Maybe a pagan had spotted him, ratted him out. We were being set up, ambushed. That's why Les and Eminem had ordered us to arrive early. For the first time in the investigation, I felt real fear. Surrounded by assault rifles, machine guns, machetes, and wasted outlaws, I had no defense, no way to alert the cover team. I made excuses, said I had to use the restroom, and spent precious minutes straining through the dark clubhouse in search of Gringo. Where the fuck had he gone? Our escape plans seemed ridiculous now. We had talked about bolting for the train tracks that bordered the forest outside the clubhouse. When we were clear, one of us would call the cover team. I didn't know when to leave. We hadn't discussed time. I returned to the bar, hoping my face masked my panic. My hands shook as I poured more alcohol. 2 hours ticked by. I heard no sounds of torture, no gurgling, no screams. I saw no outlaws emerge with bloodstains. Another hour passed. The train tracks loomed in my thoughts. We were all in this together. We all had to emerge triumphant as a team. This operation was no solo act. Where the fuck had Gringo gone? As outlaws blurred around me, anger coursed through me. Even in war, there were rules of engagement, and there were crimes. We had a pact, an unspoken bond, the agents and me. We defended each other, we sacrificed, but not like this. I had imagined a shootout, a chance, not quite cowardice, picking us off one by one. By the 3rd hour, I really panicked. I worried that if I acted too soon, I might jeopardize the investigation, and if I didn't act at all, Gringo might pay with his life. "I need to pee," I mumbled and bunched my wet rag in my hand. I slipped into the hallway, listened to voices for high-pitched inflections or anything that signaled distress. The clubhouse, surrounded by fields and forests, also bordered a nearby abandoned warehouse. I hadn't thought to check there. Fans blew in most of the rooms, but the hallways lengthened like hot tunnels. I decided if I didn't find Gringo this time, I would approach Les and make up a story. Gringo's old lady had a car accident and the hospital call. Just as I rehearsed the lines in my head, I caught a glimpse of Gringo through an open window in the warehouse. He was working the bar. My body relaxed. He looked tired and sweaty, but very much alive. In my nightmare, I heard bullets, deliberate shots to the back of Gringo's head. His words floated above me. They asked me to work the bar, man. A train rushed by, its low whistle like a warning. I startled, awake, drenched in sweat. Gringo stirred beside me. We had slept maybe 2 hours. Suddenly, I couldn't breathe. Pressure pushed against my chest. With the Vagos, I worried about my own safety. Now, as a team member, I felt responsible for the cast. We all did. Today was too close. Do you think Snuff knows? Gringo curled on his side. The glare of the parking lights flooded our van. If he does, he would have already shot you. My back faced him. He asked a lot of questions. He messes with everyone. I sat up. Tired as I felt, sleep eluded me. What if he knows? We debated Snuff for another hour, and finally I said, what can we do about it? Shut down the investigation? All of this was dangerous, life-threatening gamemanship. Paranoia was part of the play. All outlaws sniffed out rats. At least once a week, whenever we went, someone challenged our credentials. Relief arrived the next day as Bobby, JD, and Claw joined us. Hundreds of outlaws streamed through the clubhouse ready to party. I worried about Claw. With his weak arm, he couldn't last 2 minutes behind the bar. I envisioned him with bruised eyes and an injured shoulder. Gringo assigned him to food service. With the women, his jaw dropped, but relief skittled across his face. He knew better than to protest. With Coach, I qualified. You'll be safe with him. The outlaw was a chef and one of the few happy bikers. Claw nodded and ducked out to mold sandwiches in the cafeteria. I dragged to my post, outside feeling dehydrated and sick. Gringo, too, looked ill. We had worked nearly 48 hours without reprieve, and the 2 hours we stretched in the van hardly qualified as rest. I wasn't sure I was going to make it. The others had rented a hotel for the weekend. I was ready to trade with them. Pain shot through my legs as I forced them to stand. Just when I thought I would collapse, Milwaukee Jack changed up our routine. With his hands on his hips, his gray beard fluttering in the breeze, he barked at several of us prospects to spray paint a large white circle in the grassy field behind the clubhouse. The fumes made me nauseous. This couldn't be good. Crouched on all fours, sun on my neck, my cut soaked with sweat, I knew painting would be the easy part. Les bobbed next to Milwaukee Jack, a sardonic smile on his face. When we finished, he announced we would be the entertainment. We had to submit to gladiator matches. Jack ordered all of us prospects and probates to put our names in a plastic container. He asked for volunteers. No one raised his hand. Jack reached into the bucket and paired us off with probates. Mine, 10 years my junior, matched my size, but his veins bulged beneath his t-shirt. Humidity drenched us before we even began, and I dreaded the thought of his sweaty body tangled up in mine. There were no rules, not really. The objective was to win, toss the other person out of the white painted circle. Still, Les's voice droned on. 2 men per fight, 1 fight at a time, and fights last as long as they have to. A hush fell over the crowd. On Les's signal, we dropped to the grass, each of us scrambling to pin the other first. Our legs and arms roped together. Adrenaline shot through me. The stench of sweat and body odor gagged me. I hadn't showered for days. I pushed the probate shoulder blades into the ground. He winced in pain, but I didn't let up. Instinct took over, and suddenly, it wasn't about winning or losing. It was about feeling. The crowd faded into the backdrop. It was just me and the probate. And as I threw him out of the circle and heard the crowd erupt, sharp pain shot through my left foot. It throbbed and swelled suddenly as a heavy brick. I hobbled to the side, wriggled out of my boot. My foot turned a sickly gray like spoiled meat. By the next morning, my foot had lost all feeling. I improvised, popped Tylenol, soaked the foot in the hotel tub, and dragged it along for errands. Now you know what I deal with. Claw flapped his deformed arm at me. Meanwhile, Gringo continued to worry. He thought he recognized faces among the guests. A woman who served him a ham sandwich looked familiar. He knew her from his Warlocks investigation. He was concerned she had seen his photo displayed on the Warlocks' website, but her dull gaze held no hint of recognition. Still, doubt lingered. At any moment, the parts might click. She could snap her fingers, cry foul, and sick an army of angry outlaws on him. And as cameras flashed, Gringo instinctively ducked behind another server. a move that aroused suspicion. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" Snuff barked instantly at him. "Nothing, I just don't like being photographed." Snuff's face contorted. He pulled his invisible sword from his sheath and prepared to lunge. "Why, are you a fucking cop?" Gringo pretended to be insulted. He bristled, his face reddened. "What the fuck?" Tension rippled through them. I forgot to breathe. Then the lines in Snuff's face smoothed. He relaxed, laughed. "Shit," he said. "Of course you're not a fucking cop. That would be suicide." Snuff continued to test Gringo. He solicited him for drug buys, smacking him hard on the shins with his cane as if he were a goat, ordering him to purchase cocaine from his associates. Hand-to-hand buys could often be the riskiest. I envisioned Gringo exchanging cash with shadows, brokering deals in hushed tones, outnumbered in hollow corners, unsure of quality, quantity, or even safety. When I could, I initiated the buys with the agents, inserted myself as a foil just in case we got ripped or played. Under duress, when Gringo bought drugs from Snuff, there were no human barriers. Hours later, Gringo returned with the cocaine. He looked sweaty and pale. I never asked for details. Snuff nodded appreciatively, took the stash from Gringo, and consumed most of the coke on his own. Then he hobbled onto the crowd and offered hours of marriage to the guests, small samples of cocaine. Meanwhile, another outlaw approached Gringo with party favors, shoveled him handfuls of oxycodone pills and several muscle relaxers for the stress. Later, Gringo would tell jurors he lived in some sort of nightmare. Despite my grossly oversized foot, I still hustled for drinks for the outlaws for damn near 5 hours before the national boss, Milwaukee Jack, swaggered into the human space looking like a lumberjack and announced an impromptu meeting with the patch holders only. The air sizzled with tension as the crowd thinned. The remaining members exceeded 300. My foot throbbed. Jack ushered the agents and me in front of a small platform stage in the center of the clubhouse. I felt like a prize pig. Stress coursed through me. We were hopelessly outnumbered. If this was some kind of target practice. Fierce faces stared at us, drunk, high on cocaine, their throats scarred with tattoos. Some wore SS lightning bolts on their cuts, boldly telegraphing recent kills. As my heart raced and my breathing labored, I thought about death and whether it would hurt. It was true what people said about life being reduced to short, fast clips. My past didn't replay for me, only my future. My wife, my son, my absence in their lives. Cold dawning hit me. I had risked everything. I glanced at Bobby, Gringo, JD. They, too, had sacrificed. If it ended now in a volley of bullets, no one would know how they died as heroes. Jack broke the tension. "You fucked up," he boomed. "We're going to take your colors." The room inhaled. My heart thumped. When had we fucked up? Maybe Gringo had been right after all. Maybe Snuff did know about us. Then, as if an invisible flag waved, outlaws suddenly stormed us. Random fists clawed at my vest. Sour breath brushed against my neck. I struggled, blocked outlaws with my body, and grabbed my cuts. Fight, fight, fight for the colors. Instinct took over as members punched, pummeled my chest, stomped my bruised foot. Cheers, claps, congratulations resounded around me. Drenched in sweat, sore, and completely stressed out, we watched North Carolina's boss, Les, grin and hand us our coveted diamond 1%er patches. It took me a moment to focus, to adjust to the news that we had made it. We were outlaws. Jack raised his right hand. "Repeat after me. I state your name." I struggled to stand. Sharp pain stabbed my stomach. "I state your name." My 2 hours of sleep had taken their toll. Laughter erupted around me. The agents coughed and panted next to me, their faces flushed and sweaty. Then, one by one, each member congratulated us by punching us hard in the center of our 1%er patch. By the 50th hit, I felt nothing but numb. Then, one outlaw surprised me. He bolted from behind and thrust his fist into my solar plexus. The force knocked the wind from my lungs. My eyes watered. When the beatings tapered, celebration began. Congratulatory howls reached a crescendo. I was hugged, backslapped, and baptized in beer. I hobbled around the stage, giddy with pride. Damn, I had passed into one of the most brutal bike gangs in the world. We were the fireworks. As full patches, We had access now to the internal workings of the club. Not only could we openly purchase guns and dope and record every detail for future prosecutions, but we could also listen without scrutiny to death plots. The confessions broke like dams, as almost immediately we were briefed on the outlaws' mission, hunting Hell's Angels. They looked like us, smelled like us, were armed and drugged and dirty like us, but they were the enemy, combatant, and they had to be eradicated. Les put his arm around my shoulder, completely drunk. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. Bodies fell around us, deep sleep. My foot now resembled a rubber appendage, something unreal and beast-like, a limb from a movie set. The pain kept me sharp. Les's breath in my face, sweetly rotten, warned if we saw Hell's Angel, we had to attack. If we hesitated, he would pull our 1%er patch and everyone would know we were a coward. Like a scarlet letter, we would be branded, targets for ridicule. Les's face turned pepper red, as if the thought of murder aroused him. It was late. We gathered around our clubhouse bar. I poured Les another, hoping he would continue his rant for the cameras. Murder had suddenly become a focal point, and it was no longer a matter of if it would happen, but when and with what device. The next morning, we prepared to return to Petersburg. Still incapacitated from my gladiator match, I couldn't ride my bike. Instead, I traveled in the van with Claw. Milwaukee Jack surprised us and said he would be honored to ride home with us. As he mounted his bike, my heart sank. I didn't want to ride 5 hours with Claw. I wanted to be in the action. They sped in tandem, riding the 220 miles along the freeway, outlaw and agent side by side. Back at our clubhouse, we invited Jack inside our fully wired lair. We sent Claw away, concerned that his mouth would get us in trouble. As the sun set, we clicked on lamps. In the dim haze, Jack offered us tips to get the Hells Angels, especially the stray who roamed our neighborhood. We are at war, he reminded us and slammed back more beer. He grew increasingly agitated as we shared with him our problems with the merciless souls. Jack had an easy solution. Just put a cap in them. He formed his fingers into a gun and pulled the trigger. I hope the cameras got a close-up. As he stood to leave, he handed each of us a patch. Sew it on your cuts when you get a chance, he said. I stared at mine, at the bold, embroidered, snitches are a dying breed.